On behalf of literally everyone else in Florida, I would like to apologize to the country for Broward County. It is about the most dysfunctional, backward place I've ever seen. There's a story out, and there's been a continuing problem down there regarding the infrastructure. And it's a great opportunity for me to speak to a group of people who are very mistaken about my belief systems. They think that I'm some closet Democrat, some Hillary loving, because they only have one definition of socialism in their mind. And being the binary thinkers that they are, anybody who doesn't support A must obviously support B. I've said 1,000 times, and I'll say it again, the Republicans in this country are just as bad as the Democrats. The Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. They are the same group of people. All they are talking about is keeping the same failed system in place and just moving the deck chairs around on the sinking ship, so to speak. Now, what's the story? What am I talking about? Fort Lauderdale mayor seeks state, federal aid after 211 million gallons of sewage leaks from pipes into streets and drinking water. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are like, see, that's what happens when you have Democrats in charge. It's not just about the Democrats being in charge down there. Yeah, they're a bunch of sad sacks, don't get me wrong. But there is no shortage of money down there. The problem is when you start talking about raising taxes at all down there, even though it's all Democrats, people lose their minds. You see, a lot of people don't realize this is Rush Limbaugh's backyard. This is where the current leader calls his home. Broward and Palm Beach. And they're quintessentially all solid blue. The current leader was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat for years and years and years. I don't dislike him because he's a Republican. I dislike him because finger in the wind. And he tells you he's doing all of these wonderful things, but you mark my words. The government's going to give in on this. The federal government's going to send him the money. Even though Fort Lauderdale had the money, they put it into other things. Tax cuts and for big business. And this is not the first time this has happened down here. In fact, it's happened, I believe, 9 times in the last year. There was a huge one last year. I have a really good friend who is pretty high up with Marriott, runs a hotel down there, and it was a nightmare for her down there last year when they lost, it was a freshwater main that had broken. And they have all of these big, huge, ritzy hotels, and they had no fresh water for like a week. They had to go ship in bottled water. And like I said, it is one of the wealthiest places in Florida. You see, this is where people get their minds kind of screwed up because when you hear somebody talk about corporate welfare and tax cuts, you think, oh, it's a bunch of evil, terrible, horrible socialist Democrats. The Democrats do the same thing. They do the exact same thing. And then when things don't work out, then they go running, crying to the federal government. You see, here's the crux of the problem. You cannot finance a country on income taxes. You cannot finance a country on income taxes. See, the strange idea that the wealth of the nation belongs to the people. All of the things that we mine, all of the things that we produce, agriculture, oil, all that stuff. The proceeds from the sale of those things should be financing our government, not taxing private corporations and taking that, because that causes, like you can see right now, we're on the edge of the abyss, $23 trillion in debt, and people hating each other more than ever. And like I said, you can look up Broward County tax cuts. Every stinking time, of course, an ad's going to pop up there. Every stinking time they try it down there, it fails. And you wouldn't think that would be the case with it being all parentheses D down there. This is where I have failed. I have failed in trying to explain this to people. See, about Venezuela, I know you get the idea that Venezuela finances its country on the revenue from oil. Some people say, well, they should be more diverse. It's a country smaller than the size of Florida. They can't just invent things. They can't just say, okay, now we're just going to make all of our money from making computer parts. It just doesn't work that way. We can do that because we're 50 independent states, each with our own independent economies. But that's another video for another day. The part that I failed on is explaining how that money that the Venezuelan government gets from oil becomes things that the people in Venezuela need. You see, the Venezuelan government takes that money, knowing that it belongs to the people of Venezuela, and then they make these deals with companies around the world for all sorts of goods, groceries and clothes and TVs, all this kind of stuff, and they import them at an incredibly low, cost, way lower than any business could ever negotiate. Now, here's where the mistake is being made. My fault is being shown here. Not every single thing, not every single business in Venezuela has products whose prices are controlled by the government. In fact, it is a small, teeny-weeny, itty-bitty little fraction of things that the Venezuelan government says you may not charge more than this on for these things. Things like toilet paper, deodorant, flour, oil, rice. These things, the very basics of life. The rest of those things that the Venezuelan government imports, you can charge whatever you want down there. But you see, there's this group of people that every time somebody tries to do something like that, they see an opportunity to speculate. They see an opportunity to try to screw the system over so they can get control of it. And I think you know who I'm talking about. This is why I've said we cannot have an R or D solution, because they're both controlled by corporations. Now, here's the end part of that story. So the Venezuelan government imports these things that they say, okay, you can't business, storefront, we're going to give you this product, this rice, this flour, this deodorant at an incredibly low price, and you can mark it up a certain amount, but not more than this other amount. Okay? Based on only those little 50 things, the government then says, okay, based on the cost of these things now that we know what they're going to be, we're going to create a basic monthly minimum salary that is enough to supply a person with a 1-month supply of those things. So if a person goes and earns one minimum salary per month, they can take that money and they can go and purchase all of those basic things. Now, very few people in Venezuela only earn one minimum salary. Most jobs are done in multiples of that salary, 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, something like that. Also, just about everybody, and you can ask Jose Cruz, the guy that came to my channel, you can go ask him. Almost everybody does some type of a side hustle. His wife they have chickens and they sell eggs. The government doesn't get involved in that. They do all sorts of, and he was a fisherman, and he would go out and catch stuff, and he would make all sorts of other money too, and he just got himself another really good job. Plus, on top of that, the government takes care of a lot of things for free. Gasoline was free. Healthcare was free. So many different things. Now, what's the scam? What caused the problem in Venezuela? All right, over here in Colombia, and remember, this was an open border, bad idea, I agree. These thugs were taking US dollars into Venezuela and cutting deals with these storefront operators. You see, the storefront operators didn't like this idea of these 50 things that they knew they were going to sell a shitload of having controlled prices. So this Colombian thugs come in and say, we'll give you more than that for it, but you have to give us the entire supply. The day it comes in, it never goes on the shelf. And so they would cut these corrupt backdoor deals. And so then when the people would go to the store and all of the planned 50 things were not there, you know what the store owners would do? The store owners would say, oh, that damn Maduro, that horrible corrupt Maduro, he just doesn't know what he's doing. We need to overthrow him. We need to put somebody else in there. Really knows how to run a business right. Even though everything the government had done what it said it was going to do, they were just hiding the shit in the back. And then the Colombian thugs would take it across the border, having gotten it super, super cheap, and then they would skyrocket the price. So what choice do the people have? They would go across the border, they would buy these things. But here was the game. These thugs that bought the stuff with dollars would only take bolivars. So what happens when you start sucking the currency out of a country? And that currency becomes less and less and less available. Guess what happens? The government has to start printing more money. Guess what happens when the government prints more money? That's right, hyperinflation. See how that works? This is what happened in Venezuela. Not just some ethereal idea that socialism fails. Was there corruption? Yes. Was it the Venezuelan government? There were elements. But was the system corrupt? No. There might have been some naivete, and even they admit that. Even they admit they should have been a lot more dutiful on the border. There were Colombian drug dealers that were getting out of the drug dealing business, and they were getting into the fuel smuggling business because there was so much more money to be made driving into Venezuela with tankers, filling up huge amounts, bribing the gas station owners, and then driving across to back the border to Colombia and selling it at a markup, which pretty much was everything because they were getting it nearly free. All they had to do was bribe the gas station owner. See, this is what happens when somebody tries to do something good for everyone, tries to put together a system that helps everyone. There's always going to be this group of people that's going to find a way to screw it over and then buy off the media to tell you something happened that didn't happen. And I'll reiterate it. Not every single thing, every business had price controls in Venezuela. Quite the opposite. The only things that had price controls on them were these basic 50 things. But because these fedecamaras, look up Fedecamaras, fedecamaras, this corrupt cabal of businesses got together and they found a way to get around the system in collusion with Colombia and elements inside Colombia to collapse the system. Because they wanted to install people that would make sure that they could get richer off of the oil. And this is exactly the problem in Broward. The problem in Broward is this. Why pay for what you can get for free? Isn't that rule of business number one? Why would you ever pay for something you can get for free? So they let things go to hell and then poison thousands and thousands of fish and manatees and create this nightmare and then say, oh, government, oh, DC, come help us, come save us. And you mark my words, this will be a great test for Mr. Trump to see if he really is going to stick by his words about being a capitalist and not a socialist. If he says no, then he's a capitalist. He'll say Fort Lauderdale, You had the money, you had the ability to fix this, and you didn't. Now it's on you. It's not the federal government's job to bail you out. Raise taxes, do whatever you need to do, but it's on you. But if he kowtows because it's his backyard and says, okay, here's the 211, or pardon me, I don't know how much federal aid they're looking for, but they're looking for all sorts of money from the government to fix this when it was their job to do. But of course, that would have meant, evil, terrible, horrible socialist taxes and infrastructure investment. So I'll leave it there. So once again, apologies to the rest of the world, primarily the country, on behalf of everyone else in Florida for the absolute insanity that goes on in Broward. Like, share, subscribe.